My name is Jodrai, and this is my Visual Communications Identity Unit video evaluation. To start off with this unit, I first created a couple of mind maps describing me and depicting the word identity itself. We were then introduced to our first artist, Tracy Emin. We were shown pieces of artwork without knowing the artist's name, and we were told to give our own opinions on it before learning about what she does and the work she's done with identity. We then moved on to look at the artist Howard Hodgkins and how he depicts perspective within his paintings. Now, to link with identity, we then designed our own piece, creating a bird's eye view of our own bedroom. We then moved on to look at self-portraits, and my first portrait I did using pencils, and I really wanted to create a lot of depth and a lot of tonal range, a wide tonal range within my piece. After that, I then moved on independently to look at artists who look at self-portraits, and I tried to recreate a self-portrait produced by Georgia O'Keeffe. We also looked at grid distortion and creating portraits using a distorted grid to deform the face and make the piece look more visually interesting as a whole. Our next task was to create 3 pieces using images of our face, and this could be done using photo manipulations or creating self-portrait using different mark making techniques. I really liked this piece, however I think it could have been developed further by adding colour to it, which is what I did using watercolours. We then started to look at wire sculptures and creating a multiple blind contour images of our face, which we could then develop into a wire sculpture. I really enjoyed this task. I thought it was really different, and the lighting effects of the wire sculpture helped create some really cool distorted versions of the sculpture on a flat surface. I then moved on to look at the artist Jim Dine and how he creates pieces based on a single object which he has carefully produced. So I then created my own piece of an inanimate object of a tie, which took me a long time because I really wanted to get that essence of a tie. I also moved on to look at the artist Salvador Dali, and how he looks at surrealism and depicts it in identity with his self-portraits. I then created my own self-portrait inspired by the style of Salvador Dali. My next task was to bring in an object that we thought related to us. So for this I brought in my very first pair of shoes that I got as an infant, and with this I took multiple photos and redrew them using different mark making techniques and using different mediums. I then looked at Roy Lichtenstein and how he creates portraits of people in his very pop arty style, so I wanted to produce a piece inspired by his style. Again, I then moved on to Guy Dennings and looked at how he produces portraits, and I made my own portrait inspired by his style. The next task we were looking at was creating marks to music and specific songs. And I thought this task was really interesting because it made you really think about what marks you're making and the use of colour. Now with the Guy Dennings piece that I created, I thought that it could be developed further. So I decided to take that piece and enlarge it using a photocopier and apply different filters to it. I also looked at another artist, Pete Mondrian, who looked at abstract pieces, and he created a very popular pop arty kind of style. So to link with identity, I made my own map of my route to college in the style of his work. I then moved on to planning my first final piece. Now with my final pieces, I knew I wanted one to depict my identity physically and visually, so I knew I wanted to produce a self-portrait. So I first started testing out different mediums and what I liked using and what I thought worked best. After doing that, I decided that I wanted to work with colouring pencils to produce my final piece, and so I then started collecting photos and adding different filters to them which I could potentially use as references. I'm really happy with how my first final piece turned out because I really feel like it resembles me both physically, and I'm like really happy with like the marks I made within it. I just overall think it looks good and really represents me. I then moved on straight away to creating my second final piece. Now I started looking at artists Messenger and Louise Nielsen, because I really like the way in which they incorporate little objects and creating a piece using collage. So I then started looking at frames and different objects that I think could work, which is when I decided that matchboxes would be the best. They're really small and they can also contain like little objects which I think represent me. Overall, I'm really happy with how the second piece turned out, because the designing process I thought was really hard, trying to think of different aspects of my life I thought were the most important. I'm really happy with how both my pieces, final pieces turned out, and I really liked this unit because I thought it really helped me understand who I was and what I thought represented me. Thank you for watching.